Why, hello there, and welcome to my YouTube channel, and I will be your host, Timely. So, a new Tales of Wind update has just dropped, and a lot of changes have came by, and they are actually very worthy of talking about, and this is because Neocraft just buffed slash nerfed Ranger. Well, they actually kind of buffed us in a way, but they also kind of nerfed us. They tweaked our class a little, making it different, making changes or making it stronger in certain scenarios and making it weaker in other scenarios. So I want to talk about that with you guys. So first, let's go over the abilities. I actually memorized most of the abilities, but I can't tell you for sure, and I'm too lazy to actually compare and contrast what the old abilities were. I'd have to find the pictures and stuff, but I memorized most of them. So let's first talk about Fairy Arrow, which is one of the bigger changes in my opinion. And first, you can see that Fairy Arrow is no longer a 4-second cooldown. It is now an 8-second cooldown. So after you're done using it for 4 seconds, you have to wait another 4 seconds to use it once more. So no longer can we spam Fairy Arrow in the back line. So that's a kind of a letdown actually. I actually liked just standing in the back, just chilling, just hitting Fairy Arrow constantly. And that was a luxury. We never had to auto attack, and now we actually had to add auto attack in our rotation now because of this. So that's one major big change for Ranger. And if we look more into the ability itself, we can see that Neocraft has noticed a weakness that Rangers had. And the weakness that we had was that we did not have that much burst damage, and we do not have that much survivability. So the way they try to offset that was giving us crit resistance for the first 4 seconds when we cast it, and then also they added the buff to the enhanced Fairy Arrow, which gives us a 35% shield that lasts for 8 seconds upon casting Fairy Arrow. So I guess the bubble can be good for lifesteal builds and healing, so that you have time to have your enemies hit your bubble, and then you can use really high percentage of lifesteal to get that HP back. So there is that. I guess they added the 8-second cooldown so that we cannot spam bubble as often. So there is that. And then also there's one more change too for the enhanced Song of the Forest, okay? So they made the ability much more selfish, so it does not increase the damage of all teammates by 15% anymore like it used to. Now it only increases the damage of everyone, team members, all the team members by 5%, and now it additionally increases your own damage by 15% and ignore defense by 30%. So they knew that Rangers had a hard time at doing DPS against tankier enemies, especially berserkers or tanks or tankier bosses in general. We had really good damage over time, but we did not have a good way to mitigate or to pierce through enemy defenses very well, because we do lots and lots of hits per second, and each hit is it's not like a big chunk. You see, the way you have to look at DPS is that the harder you hit, the more you're going to pierce through your enemy's defense, because when it goes through the formula and it's a bigger number for the hit, it doesn't decrease it as much compared to a smaller hit. So say you do like a 20k hits for 5 20k hits or something like that, and then it goes to their defenses. Each one of those hits is going through their defense formula. Instead of just one giant hit being reduced, you have 5 small hits being reduced. So that's one of the major differences, is that hitting tankier foes with really weak small hits actually gave us a really hard time versus tanks. And you could see that in some apocalypse where the last one left alive would be a tank, and you would just be sitting there doing fairy arrow, and the tank would just keep regenning because your DPS wasn't enough and you didn't do enough damage. So I guess now that ignoring the physical defense can help us a little bit when we're setting up our burst. So this is really big changes, guys, and I can't tell if this is kind of like a buff but also a nerf at the same time. So it's going to take some getting used to. I don't think it's really class change worthy. I'm still going to try it out. So, oh yeah, and I also forgot to talk about is since they added they increased the cooldown of fairy arrow, right? So since they increased the cooldown of fairy arrow, they had to make it a lot stronger. It was never 2,560% attack plus 7,200 before. It was actually 1,400%. So they increased the percentage by 1,000%, which is 1,100%, which is actually insanely strong. They pretty much doubled the damage of our fairy arrow almost. They almost doubled the damage, but it's not quite doubled the damage. So I actually did notice that. I'm like, why is my fairy arrow critting for like 20 to 30k? It wasn't doing that before. Then I started reading into the skill. I was like, oh, okay. And then like I remember I was using fairy arrow and I'm like, what the heck? How come I can't spam it? Why is my fairy arrow still on cooldown? Did I get stunned during the beginning of my animation? And I was trying to like put all this together. So finally I looked at the notes and I was like, oh, we got changes. So the one bad thing I can see about this is that our enemies can get smart, and then when they see fairy arrow, they can just stun us out of it. So they can just time their stun every time we use fairy arrow, and they can just completely shut our fairy arrow down. So I can actually see that being a very huge con, is now that we can't use fairy arrow whenever we want. We have to use it according to an 8-second cooldown. People can take advantage of us that way, especially since it's our heaviest hitting ability. So that's what I've noticed so far. So PvP might be a little bit more iffy for us, and we might not we might not be as desirable as we were before. Like, we weren't even desirable in the first place, so there's that. Everybody wants priests and stuff. So when I was looking at it, let's try hitting this room boss a little bit. So my rotation before was Power of Nature, Fairy Sanctuary, the buff, Power of Nature, and then we just kind of spam Fairy Arrow. But now we can't spam Fairy Arrow anymore, so I have to kind of just auto attack in between and then use this Fairy Arrow one more time, and then I can reset my dots. Like, the main thing you want to do is to get all your dots up at the same time. So as you can see here, I have the boss right in front of me. So Power of Nature, Fairy Sanctuary, get the buffs up, Power of Nature. Now I have 3 dots up, and then I put up my Fairy Arrow just for like a huge burst opportunity. So hopefully that's going to be enough burst to kill some players. I don't know though, it's going to be really iffy. It's going to be really weird in player versus player, because if we don't get our kill in that time frame, chances are that enemies are gonna have a really easy time of getting away. So we will see. We'll see. We're getting to our 10-minute mark, so I might have to end the video soon. So, but before I do that, let's talk about the progress of my character. So recently, I got all my stuff to plus 12. Woo, yeah, plus 12. All right. And I'm also working on a new build too. So now I got my crit up really high. I put in Margaret again, and then I have like 1 black cat. So my crit's pretty decent. And then now I'm putting in metal guard so that I can have lifesteal. Because I figure that now that the new changes have come in, I think that lifesteal is going to be more valuable for ranger. So now I'm working on that, and my only goal for now is to get my magic attack up, gouge my magic attack really high while keeping my damage modifiers where they are at. So I want to keep my damage relatively at 2.0, and I want to keep my crit rate a little bit above 25%. And that's pretty much it. So hopefully I can get stronger and make sure that my fairy arrow burst is optimized so that I can kill players within that 4 seconds. I don't know if I will be able to, but we'll see. We will see how strong it is when I try to treasure hunt next time. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I have to get going now. Peace.